Good morning, everyone out in Zoom land. My name is Julie Gill, and I'm the new Executive Director of Lean Energy. It's an honor to be able to step in and fill the large shoes left by Sean Marshall, the founder of Lean. Thankfully, she's not left the CCA world and is now working at Calpine Energy Solutions, still advocating and advancing for CCAs just from a different seat. She has been a valuable source of information and relationships for me, and I am so grateful. One thing that I know for sure after 5 months in this role is that even with 24 years in the energy industry, stepping into this role, I have learned so much about how much I have to learn. And so it has been a fun, overwhelming, and incredible challenge so far. I am blessed to still have Allison Elliott, which most of you know, to remain a valuable team member of Lean. Allie has played a critical role for many, many years with Lean, and I am so grateful to get to work alongside her and learn from her. I've really loved hearing about the value she has brought to so many California CCAs as we embarked on the first phase of our listening tour this year. Her use of Google Drive and Dropbox and now Zoom keep me humble every day and keep her very, 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 very useful. So indeed, she's a smart cookie. As we look at the next chapter of Lean, we have begun to start referring to it as Lean 2.0. And let me see if I can advance the slide. Test number 1. We've begun referring to it as Lean 2.0. And what that means is that in the last decade, Lean has been instrumental in the formation and expansion of CCAs, which has resulted in exponential, I didn't do that. That screen advancing. Lean has been instrumental in the formation and expansion of CCAs, which has resulted in exponential growth. There are now more than 1,200 communities nationally benefiting from CCAs. And we've been working with our longtime supporters and funders to gain feedback on the value that Lean has provided in the last decade, as well as to help charter our path forward. Today's webinar is being held because we've gotten robust feedback that the webinars are incredibly helpful to bring everyone up to speed on the status of CCAs nationally. And we would love to see your feedback following this webinar. So please feel free to reach out to me or to Allison. These slides will be posted on our website as well as the recordings, and it includes our contact information, both in the slides and on our website. We're gonna do our best to answer questions you place in the Q&A function on Zoom. If you look in your screen, it should be on the bottom. And so Allison will be focusing on helping to do that while we are presenting. And we will do our best to answer all of those questions that come in, but we will also circle back to you offline if we don't get to yours today. We will not be utilizing the chat feature for questions and try to only have one pathway of communication in this webinar. So thank you for your patience and understanding. So, Allie, let me see if I can, I'm going to advance to, there we go. So what does Lean 2.0 look like? We've organized our work into basically 4 buckets, and we're going to be prioritizing the efforts based upon the level of support, available project funding, and existing in-state capacity and leadership. One of the most interesting comments that we heard on our listening tour is that the growth of the industry nationwide is a part of the best defense strategy for California CCAs. The more states that adopt and have successful outcomes, the more it actually enhances California's message that we're not doing this crazy idea alone as part of some wacky experiment. So to that end, it's exciting to now present to you how we're all thinking about Lean 2.0. The first category of work is to expand CCAs in states where CCAs are authorized and have the ability to form new CCAs or join existing ones. We believe there are possibilities for also enabling innovative program features beyond cost savings as well. Our states of focus given feedback to this point are California, of course, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, New York, Ohio, and Virginia. And we will be providing some updates today on some of these states. But there's also interesting movement in Rhode Island that we were investigating this week. So you'll see a little bit of an update on that too. The second bucket of work is to enable CCAs in states that need legislation or regulation at the state and local levels. At this point, we view our states of focus to be Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Maryland, Michigan, and New Mexico. The third bucket of work is the protection of existing CCAs. And Lean will continue to monitor and engage in regulatory and legislative activities to protect CCAs. Right now, we see that as California, New Hampshire, and New York. And I'll elaborate further in the presentation on California and New Hampshire, and our featured guest speaker, Mike Gordon, will be speaking to you about New York. The fourth bucket is the collaboration that Lean has always provided, and we are looking at new ways to provide greater collaboration opportunities. One of the immediate asks that we had is for a professionally produced video that stakeholders can use to describe to decision makers what CCA actually is in 5 to 7 minutes. We energy nerds tend to speak in acronyms, and we can easily lose listeners to key concepts or not find the right hook to engage them. With one project group, we worked to develop a Zoom recording that could be shared with a local city council to give them just enough information for them to want to follow up with a study session that we could help facilitate. Many people take for granted that their lights will come on, and they don't think a lot about where that energy is coming from. We found that comparing it to everyday items that people now are readily understand help creates a framework to really open the conversation. In fact, you're probably watching me speak from that very device. It was not that long ago that cell phone providers provided very little flexibility, and you were in essence a captive customer if you wanted to keep your cell phone number. You based your monthly plan on peak versus non-peak minutes, how many texts you could send. Oh, and don't forget the roaming fees if you went anywhere outside of your service territory. The cell phone companies fought really hard against opening it up to competition because they financially benefited from having you as a captive customer and being able to decide what options and what they provide for you. And so customer choice and getting to port their numbers was just something they didn't want to provide to customers. And now look at where we are. The customers own their numbers and they can make informed decisions about the service they want. And the focus is now on the amount of data and the data quality. The market has responded and transformed and innovated based to the opening up of competition. The same is true with energy serving our homes. Americans want more renewable energy. National Geographic wrote a fantastic article about the slow uptake of renewable power sources by investor-owned utilities. And so communities are taking power into their own hands. If you have an interest in seeing that article, Allison has linked it already to our Lean website. And we believe that a professionally produced video that is easily shareable from our website will be a great asset to help drive the conversation forward nationally, especially in this crazy world where we're working from home and we do everything via Zoom. We believe that we could reach a far greater audience quicker in that way. So we'll also be talking a little bit at the end about what funding would look like on that. We have estimates that it could cost around $40,000. And to those of you that think it would help benefit you in any of your conversations with stakeholders, whether you're an existing CCA or you're exploring the possibility of CCA, we'd be honored if you'd consider helping to fund that. Okay, so there we go. The national perspective. So everybody knows we've had a change in leadership in January at the presidential level and with his administration. So what does the first 100 days look like so far? And there have been many, many things, pardon me for 1 second, that we can report out on President's first 100 days in office, but we're really going to limit our lens to things that show promise for CCAs. President Biden's key agency appointments signal the goal to tackle the climate crisis and build an equitable clean energy future. And as he has said, he plans to build back better following COVID. So what does that look like so far? In April, President Biden released a $2 trillion plan for improving the nation's infrastructure and shifting to greener energy over the next 8 years. It's being called the American Jobs Plan, and overall is supposed to be a part of a two-part proposal. There's $100 billion that has been set aside for the electric grid and clean energy. Advancing a climate agenda must address transportation, and the proposal targets $174 billion in electric vehicle investments. We've seen CCAs actively work to create electric vehicle programs, and especially robustly in California, in their communities, and the Biden plan proposing grants and incentives for public and private entities to build a network of 500,000 charging stations by 2030 is promising. We look at that as helping to really supplement and drive forward what CCAs are already doing to provide for their customers. The other thing that I wanted to highlight was that the Energy and Commerce Committee Chairman, Frank Pallone Jr., the Energy and Environment and Climate Change Subcommittee Chairman, Paul Tonko, my apologies if I've mispronounced his name, and Energy Subcommittee Chairman, Bobby Rush, introduced the Climate Leadership and Environmental Action for Our Nation's Future Act in March. It's called the Clean Future Act. And it's an ambitious climate legislation that ensures that the United States acts aggressively to tackle the climate crisis this decade and achieve net zero greenhouse gas pollution. The Clean Future Act includes a nationwide clean energy standard requiring all retail electricity suppliers to obtain 100% clean energy by 2035. And that's in line with President Biden's call to action for the power sector. And there is so much more contained within that. And this was originally introduced over a year ago and had some fundamental changes in its reintroduction. But the part that really catches my eye is that there's a provision that compels investor-owned utilities that are not already a part of a regional transmission organization, or RTO, like we like to call it, to join one within 3 years of enactment of the law. Given close margins in Congress, it may not pass. But we are already seeing states, because of the signaling last year and going forward, that are starting to plan for that. So Oregon just passed a bill requiring Portland General Electric and PacifiCorp to explore the benefits of a regional transmission organization, of joining a regional transmission organization. And Colorado is poised to pass legislation in the next few days that will require Xcel to join an RTO by 2030. Additionally, legislation was introduced in Nevada that would require NV Energy to join an RTO by 2030. We view this as important to monitor and benchmark, as it creates a market for energy and access to transmission across regions, which really does help CCAs. Also, there's the WIRED initiative, and it's a collaborative effort of the Center for the New Energy Economy, the Western Electric Industry Leaders Group, and many of the Western governors' energy policy advisors. Under the leadership of former Colorado Governor Bill Ritter Jr., their participants have been meeting over the course of 2020 to develop recommendations to Western governors on 3 interrelated topics. 1, resource adequacy. 2, transmission planning. 3, greenhouse gas accounting and state clean energy standards. And we're looking forward to the innovations and collaboration that this will bring for the Western states, and has strong signals for a West-wide RTO. When you look at the tax structures, they're also incredibly promising. And I just want to touch on something really quickly. And so for existing CCAs and those that are looking at enabling it, with the BEST Act getting in December, extending the existing ITC for solar for 2 years, the House has proposed under Congressman Green, Senator Wyden has proposed a tax regime. And right now you have competing proposals, but what they're doing is really looking at utilizing the tax structure to help incentivize the development of renewable energy. And you're looking at things that are going to be game changers, such as storage. Standalone storage has never qualified for a tax credit. Under this, under the previous tax structures, if you had hybrid systems of, say, solar plus storage, there was some tax credit. But there is promising looks that there could be standalone tax credits coming, and we will be following that in the coming months. That becomes really important when we start talking about California too, and some of the things that are happening. California. So California is just an epic success story over the last decade. There are 24 CCAs currently serving in California, and that's been an astounding rate of growth. Just when you look back to 2018, there were 9 CCAs. Now we have 24, serving more than 11 million customers in 201 cities, towns, and counties across the state. And the amazing thing about the exponential growth to CCAs is I got the pleasure of listening to Beth Vaughn, the executive director of Cal CCA, at an energy conference in April. And just the data points that had been given the day before, oops, I don't know, I didn't thank you, Holly. Just the data points that were true earlier in the week were already changing day over day. And as I've been looking to prepare this presentation, data points in my presentation literally change day over day. It's been exciting and it's been amazing to see. And I'm excited that Sean and Allison were a key part in the creation of those CCAs, and Lean looks to work really collaboratively with Cal CCA going forward. I've worked with Beth Vaughn for probably over a decade, probably going on 13 to 14 years. And so I just am really excited about what collaboration can mean between Lean and Cal CCA. So on May 1st, Clean Energy Alliance began serving customers in San Diego for the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach. And all 3 cities approved the Clean Impact Plus product, which is a 50% renewable energy and 75% carbon-free product, which will save customers 0.9%, so close to 1% over San Diego gas and electric rates. Santa Barbara Clean Energy is supposed to be launching in October. The other thing that's been really exciting to watch is there's great stories of expansion of current CCAs. If you look at the Central Coast Community Energy, 3CE, they are expanded in January to include the cities of Arroyo Grande, Delray Oaks, Grover Beach, Guadalupe, Paso Robles, Pismo Beach, Santa Maria, Solvang, and unincorporated Santa Barbara County, and Valley Clean Energy expanding to include the city of Winters. Excuse me, allergy season in Northern California. Pardon me for 1 second. So the reason why I was highlighting the federal tax credits and why they're so important is that if you look at the Joint Procurement Authority that now 10 CCAs have joined together to do, they are advancing the next wave of energy technology in a way that the Public Utilities Commission has so far not directed. When you look through the different dockets of the Integrated Resource Planning and the Resource Adequacy document, they've signaled that they would like to see 1,000 megawatts of long duration energy storage. And, but that has yet to be ordered. We're hopeful that there will be some direction. But the great thing about the nimble leadership and the visionary leadership of CCAs is that these 10 CCAs already have a procurement out there to contract for 500 megawatts of long duration energy storage. And they have been announced or been working with a robust group of bids, and they have, I believe, moved forward now with a short list as of last week, and they will be continuing to move forward. And again, I applaud their leadership in this, and I look forward to seeing how the federal tax credits can help actually, federal tax credits directly translate into ratepayer savings. And so I'm really excited to see how that emerges. And now a really sticky subject that I think is important to bring up, and it's important for us to highlight that Cal CCA and the CCAs in California really need our voices to be chiming in and help support their efforts. So Cal CCA has sponsored legislation, Senate Bill 612 under Portantino, which aims to ensure that all California ratepayers have fair and equal access to the benefits associated with investor-owned utility legacy energy resources, and that the resources are actively managed to maximize their value. Senator Anthony Portantino, as I mentioned, has brought this bill forward, and it has 23 co-authors and counting. And really where it stems from is a consensus proposal that was developed in a PUC process in a working group 3 phase of the power charge and difference adjustment proceeding. And so there were parties, Cal CCA, Southern California Edison, and Commercial Energy, that worked for over a year to develop this consensus proposal. And the PUC sat on this consensus proposal for 405 days and then pushed out a proposed decision just before SB 612 had its first hearing. The PD was authored by an administrative law judge that had no history in the proceeding. And it ignored some of the fundamental principles of fairness and equity that were a huge part of this consensus proposal. And like I said, everything's changing on a daily basis. Now, 454 days after the consensus proposal was put forward, the Public Utilities Commission commissioners took action in their commission meeting yesterday to adopt the proposed decision. Cal CCA has aptly stated that the proposed decision and now approved decision demonstrated why it's critical for the legislature to weigh in on high-level principles in addressing PCIA issues. And it aims to ensure that both IOU and departing load customers who have equal cost responsibility for the IOU's legacy resources and contracts also receive the equal access to the benefits of these resources. And so the proposed decision left departing load paying their share, but the IOU getting the first choice of the resources it will use to serve its own customers. So the Senate Energy and Utilities and Commission meeting voted on April 26 to advance this legislation 11 vote. So it's important that people engage directly in supporting this legislation, as the next hearing will be in the Senate Appropriations on May 20th. So please go to Cal CCA for more information on how to submit your letter of support. Lean is also working with new CCAs in Northern California. There are some that at this point, they're not ready to be publicly announced, but we've been working with several. Stockton, the city of Stockton has their feasibility study, which was presented to their city council on March 23rd. And Lean was proud to be working with Woody Hastings and the folks at the Climate Center to move that forward and provide testimony. Illinois has been a really, oops, I'm sorry, we just advanced the slides. Let me go back. So what we wanted to take a couple minutes to do is just share with you what's happening in states where CCA can work on expansion. And so again, we just walked through California. Now with Illinois, Illinois was one of the top CCA states. And when you look in 2014, there were more than 720 communities served. They call it municipal electricity aggregation. But the savings was based a lot on the direct energy contracts. And so some of those energy savings changed in 2014 and 2015. And so it really caused some of those to either suspend their MEA programs, but it still left hundreds moving forward. And so there has been a lot of activity that has happened positively in the last couple of months. And I listed them out for you on this presentation, that that some of the local cities have been moving forward in extending or signing new contracts for a long period, 20 months to 3 years, to continue serving under MEA. So I would invite you to go to the Lean website. Allison does a great job of keeping it updated, but that just highlights some of the positive movement in Illinois. Looking at Maryland. So Maryland is very exciting. And I just want to thank the great work of Lean in the past, and Lean is staying engaged. So there is a study, a bill that has now advanced to allow for a pilot for Montgomery County to allow community choice energy starting in 2023. And the PSC must form a community energy choice work group by September of 2021. Lean looks to be actively engaging in that. And so it has been sitting in the governor's desk. And what we understand to be is that even without a signature, it will become effective in June. So more updates to come. And like I said, Lean will be staying engaged in that space. New Hampshire. So back in 2019, there was incredible legislation that allowed community choice aggregation. Unfortunately, that took a step back in this year. And so the Eversource, an investor-owned utility, and some other utility companies were able to put forward legislation and that would restrict what the communities are able to do. The governor even voiced his concerns in February, and the hearing in February had 411 opposition letters, including one from Lean, and 9 in support. And it has been moving forward. It has, there were some amendments in the Senate floor as recently as last week, but there has been a consensus proposal reached that will take back some of the most harmful provisions and make it where community aggregation can still move forward. And we will be, staying engaged, and we will keep you informed. And you can always look to our website. Rhode Island. So Rhode Island is one that had not been really on our prioritization list, but this last week, they had some exciting progress made, and Allison participated in a webinar that they had. There are going to be 6 communities that are making significant progress in moving forward with what they call a green municipal aggregation program. So again, look to our website, and we will continue to fill you in on those details. I am so excited now to get the opportunity to have a real pioneer in the industry, Mike Gordon, share with you the incredible work that New York and Joule Assets has been able to do in a really short period of time. Just in 5 years, they had an incredible 5-year celebration a couple weeks ago, and they have just been able to do some groundbreaking work. And I'm just as excited today as I was several months ago to hear about their progress, and we're so excited to be working with them. And so with that, I am going to turn the microphone over to Mike Gordon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Julie. We're having trouble getting Mike on the line. So if you wouldn't mind, we'll skip to your update on other states.
Okay, well.
And I am working on it.
Okay, perfect. I mean, this is so 2021, right? Where would we be without our technical difficulties? So Allie, can you scroll down to and stop at Arizona for me? Okay, I'm going to try and go through these really quickly, just so that the minute we have Mike on the line, we can jump forward with that. And I really want you to be able to hear what John Kelly has to present too. So Arizona, anybody following Arizona knows that there was a large election of the Arizona Corporate Commission back in November. And people were speculating even in advance of that there would be some issues depending on how the election swayed. So they have a 3-year process that they had been working on for clean energy rules. And the fears that people had were realized after this 3-year collaborative process was rejected in a 3-2 vote earlier this month, after an amendment by Commissioner Justin Olson changed the energy mandates into goals. And so Lean reported in its last webinar in the fall of 2020 presentation that there was going to be a presentation made to the ASU Sustainable Cities Network. And I'm thrilled to tell you that a lot of positive progress has been made following that presentation. And we're working with a collection of cities and stakeholders to move a pilot city forward. And so while the news from ACC was devastating, hopefully it will be the catalyst that gets cities to stand boldly and move forward towards their sustainability and climate goals through CCAs. We're optimistic that at our next webinar, we will be able to present out more details, as the work we do this summer with the coalition will be very important. And I'm going to hit the pause button there, and I will come back to touch on Colorado, Connecticut, Michigan, and New Mexico once we hear from Mike Gordon. Mike, you have the floor.
Apologies, I was on the whole time. It's just that I was evidently on the wrong link. So
it's so 2021, Mike. We've learned to be nimble and roll with it. So thanks for sticking with us.
Apologies. So I've been listening to you talk about really regulatory offense. And that's going to be the story that we're going to tell about New York. It really is a regulatory offensive. And I'd say that, it's been slow, but I can say that, so really organizing for CCA from the ground up, the first portion of our presentation took place from roughly 2010 or 11 or 12, depending on when you discuss the onset, right through to 2016 when we actually launched and went live. And then it's really a focus on deepening the value of CCA since then. And we'll discuss some specifics around that as well. And there's one note I wanted to make, which is that we are going to be releasing for the state agency a case study on the formation of CCA in New York, a video, which is going to be 35 minutes long. And then it'll go into the deepened value in some more depth. So you'll hear, today briefly, and if folks really want to dig into the video, you're welcome to. And as well, Julie, if you want to take a look and, either, potentially utilize clips or whatever it is that you want to do there, happy to collaborate on it. So let's just get rocking. So what do I do on the slides? Do I just ask? Okay. So first of all, we started from Westchester County. Let's go to the next slide. Westchester we're roughly 350,000 homes, and we deeply engaged from the grassroots with the Recovery Act, with the beginning of the Recovery Act. Let's go to the next slide. I'm going to go through them pretty quick. We did a number of proposals in 2009 around the Recovery Act, one of which was around energy efficiency and property assessed clean energy. And this is all volunteer. And another of which was around microgrids. And what we formed is a coalition of 14 municipalities, and really was, 7 of us working for free, local activists, organizing municipalities. And we did engage, I think that we had a good deal of energy expertise in our group of 7 folks, and that expanded to a reasonably expert group of broader folks. But I think that the mayors and supervisors, they really began to rely on us to come up with local resolutions that would allow them to provide clean energy related value to their constituents. So we, for instance, in the early portion of the decade, we formed a property assessed clean energy group, which was doing energy efficiency upgrades tied to the home. And that was a development corporation. And the other thing that we did, let's go to the next slide. We built, and I'm not sure if this is on the next slide or on this one, so if I could take a sneak preview of the next slide, great, back up. Cool. So we built this collaboration, but it was really focused on, what are we going to do? What are we going to accomplish? So in the, I think it was late 2012, early 2013, what we did was we built a conference of leadership. And basically what we did, and I want to underscore, what I described took place over 4 years. We can accelerate anywhere in the United States, so that what took place over 4 years, I think that we can recreate over a period of 1.5 years, perhaps even less, almost anywhere in the United States. I really believe it individually. But what we did is very simple formula. We went to the mayors and supervisors, and they paid like $1,000 a month, $1,000 a year for a membership, which was really a blip in their budgets. And we formed this Clean Action Alliance, the Northern Westchester Energy Action Consortium. And then we went around, we asked the mayors, identify the 50 informal leaders in your community and invite them with a personal letter, identifying them as leaders and asking them to join a planning event. And so around 14 different communities, we had almost 90% turnout for these events. And what we did is we actually had, whiteboard planning. We were focusing on the energy efficiency project, focusing on the microgrid project, and focusing on community choice aggregation. But all of it was planning for a much larger conference of Northern Westchester leaders, which was another, 250, maybe 300 people were getting together, but it was a completely action-oriented conference. So we were combining education with action, but we had to be successful in the wake of this conference. We had to come up with output if we were to consider the conference to be successful. And so let's go on to the next slide. So what ended up happening is that we passed, as a result of this conference, we passed 11 resolutions of municipalities saying we need community choice aggregation authority in New York State. Pretty simple resolution. And once we passed that, there was an assembly member who had just been appointed chair of the Energy Committee, Amy Paulin, who in a meeting where we were just going over all the different projects that we were doing, Amy said, well, I can support that. I can make that happen, I believe. And she specializes in pilot programs. So what she did is she proposed legislation, or we kind of wrote it, but she introduced it to do a pilot program in Westchester County in New York. And that, it actually, was written in December. It got through Assembly the first year. The second year it got through Assembly and Senate, and it hit the governor's desk in maybe July of 2014. So let's go on. Oh, okay, cool. So I'll sit here for a minute. And what happened is that the governor was sitting here, and once we passed the pilot legislation, his decision about signing it became complex because suddenly everyone around the state was kind of looking from the outside and saying, well, why not me? And so the governor had a really difficult challenge. So what he did, now we can go to that next slide, is he vetoed the legislation, and Audrey Zibelman, who was the chair of the Public Service Commission at the time, called me and said, we got to come up with something here. And so why don't you guys write a pilot proposal, and I promise you we will have it passed within 60 days. And that's exactly what happened. We had a conversation like the second week of December. Well, all we did is we went through the Public Service Commission order and we answered their 17 or 18 questions on exactly how we would run it. And we wrote, a pretty detailed paper on how we would do the pilot. And and literally we had it in like that third week of December. By the 26th of February, we had an approved pilot for Westchester County. So let's go. So what happened is, as of the 26th of February, is we started to reach out to the municipalities. And literally, as Glenn Weinberg would say, who was like my right-hand man and still is our right-hand man at Joule, as Glenn Weinberg would say, we were building the plane while in flight. So you would have a lot of questions that folks would ask you at these 150 meetings with these boards. And you'd have to say, I don't know, here's the way we intend to do it. and here's the parameter of choices that we have around this, but we don't know exactly how we're going to resolve this. It's a very straightforward process. And towards the end of the process, and I guess we could move on. Okay, yeah. Towards the end of the process, we had to actually, we had a chicken and egg challenge, like, would we sign the contract without commitments to, would we come up with a contract and go out to bid without commitments from the municipalities? The 25 laws were passed, 60% of the county passed local laws to enable CCA. And what we got to was that we had this collaborative piece where we developed this 45-page electricity supply contract. We wanted to go 100% renewable. That was our intent. And so with the municipal attorneys, we literally built this from the ground up, issued a bid in March. And prior to issuing a bid in March of 2016, the state looked at all of our documents and said, we want to design our statewide program after what it is that you've done. So they enabled any municipality in the state to do exactly what we had done as of February 21st, 2016. So it was statewide at that point. We launched the Westchester program. 14 out of 20 municipalities went 100% renewable from the get-go. It was roughly $189 million contract. It was ranged from 2.5 to 3 years. And at this point, Westchester, as of October of 2020, Westchester had 27 municipalities, 24 of whom were entirely 100% renewable. And I think that Westchester is adding their largest municipality yet, Yonkers. So they may be at 28, maybe they're at 29 with Yonkers. And Westchester has done a broad array of enriched services for folks. So let's move on. So now our charge was to, because then that was a nonprofit organization. I was operating as chair of that nonprofit organization. Joule was supporting it as a consultant at that point. We are still very close with the Sustainable Westchester operation. We work very closely with them. We're unconnected, though, in any official manner. It's a nonprofit. It operates on its own, and it's self-sustaining. But now our challenge, was to deepen the value, and so let's go on, and I'll describe CDG now. Community distributed generation, and by the way, there's an initiative by CCSA in California to create community distributed generation viably in California. It's available in, for instance, Maryland, Jersey, Illinois, really in many states throughout the union. But it's a very powerful value. And the way it works, and I'm not sure if you could forward a slide, and I'll know if that's on some other, yeah, okay, let's go back. So it's a really simple value proposition. So it's basically that a community distributed generator is a local solar power plant generally, and they get all the value stack from the grid. They get avoided transmission, avoided distribution, they get capacity value, reliability value, they get avoided generation, they get energy value, and they get environmental credit value. And so it could be like $100 to $200 a megawatt hour of value. And the way they usually work it is that they have to have subscribers for 100% of their output. They must. Otherwise, they don't get paid. So the way they have worked it is that they've gone around door to door selling, looking for subscribers, and the subscriber has an easy value proposition. They get $200 of credits on their bill, and they pay the separate CDG $180. So it seems really simple. They're getting $20 of credit per month guaranteed, but it's really difficult to acquire customers in this situation. And because it's difficult, you need customers to get paid as a developer. You have difficulty getting capital. And there's no real consumer protection. So all sorts of people are saying all sorts of baloney to the subscribers, to the homeowners. And then beyond that, you're not certain that people will leave the program. And so therefore, how are you going to keep getting your money, which then makes it difficult to get capital again? So CDG was kind of poking along at 5 or 10 megawatts in New York in total installed. So let's go on to the next slide. And so here we go. So the way it works with CCA, and we got authorization to take CDG and apply CDG credits on behalf of our CCA membership. And so the way it actually looks now is we can contract with literally hundreds of megawatts of unbuilt CDG, hundreds of unbuilt megawatts of solar. And they get the credits. The utility owns the power. And so the way that we are doing it is let's say that the credit value is $150 per megawatt hour that the CDG puts out. Got it. I'm looking at a text to everybody. Apologies. So let's say there's $150 per megawatt hour, which is the total value that the CDG gets. So the way the construct works with CCA is that if the CCA gets 10% of that value for consumers, $15 of that $150 will go directly onto the consumer's bill, and then the utility will pay the CDG the $135 directly. And so that'll cover the cost of construction, the cost of ongoing financing, et cetera. So through CCA, what the developers get is they get guaranteed acquisition and retention of subscribers. They get less expensive acquisition. They get assurance, therefore, so that the financiers will back their project, and the utility actually owns the power in this situation. So let's go on to the next slide. We got approval for that model in March of 2018, and each individual municipality, we have 40 now, then gets rubber stamped approval from the Department of Public Service. It's pretty straightforward. Let's keep going. As a result, we had a goal statewide of 6 gigawatts of solar community distributed generation power. It looks like we're going to blow past that number. We did 300 megawatts of CDG last year. We are going to do at least 600 megawatts this year. We now have a bid in for 600 megawatts from multiple developers. I expect that we can get to 1,000 or more this year. I expect that we can do another 1,500 next. The challenge now is going to be upgrading the grid so that the distribution systems are able to handle this distributed generation, and also creating storage resources so that we can get a deeper penetration into the power grid, well beyond 6 gigawatts. Let's keep going. So let's go one more slide. Okay, perfect. So first of all, we engage the community from the grassroots and we engage them early. We can take a pilot program and even before the blanking thing is operating, it can go statewide because the process itself, if the process and the expected outcome of the process is successful, the pressure statewide on getting access to that process, it happens like that. And whether it's legislative or regulatory, the statewide, state-to-state initiative, it can absolutely be replicated nationwide. And I think that we can very substantially shorten the path from vision to reality to enrichment of program. So I think part of that message, and I think we can move on to what may be the last slide. But we are happy to work with folks, and we're looking forward to work more deeply with Lean to build programs, where, for instance, there is CDG and CCA to connect CCA with CDG and do a broader array of services for municipalities. We're happy to work directly with any of you, and it's also, I think it's critical to know that that Lean's experience, and I think others on this call, that the best defense is a powerful offense. So a couple of weeks ago, we had our 5th year anniversary, and we had commitments of 9 figures of private capital and federal money with solid regulatory environment. When you have the regulators listening to that kind of a commitment for the clean energy future, if regulators are considering desperately taking a different path, they will not. That's it. Thank you.
Mike, you excite me every time that you talk and present. And there is one question from the Q&A, and
Sure.
it was whether are customers in New York not automatically enrolled in a CCA like they are in California?
They are.
Okay.
They are automatically enrolled. So if there are, so in CDG, we're enrolling anybody who is not already in CDG, period. Anybody other than those that have a block on their utility account. And it's in an RTO environment. So we're moving towards RTO everywhere. For folks who are buying competitively, which is roughly 20%, they are not automatically enrolled, but anybody who is at the default supplier is automatically enrolled. And by the way, one key message that really worked very well is, why are you taking away my choice, right? Why are you taking over this choice? And the way we began to articulate it is, look, this choice was made for you and is being made for you every day by the state. The only thing that we're doing is we're taking the state's choice and we're giving the prerogative to the municipality to take over that choice. And you still have the option that the state is. So it's just moving the point of decision, not taking away a decision.
Amen. And I think that is hopefully what will be the rallying cry in Arizona with this action. So with that, we're going to do a little bit of change in structure. And so I was planning on walking through Colorado, Connecticut, Michigan, and New Mexico, which is states where we're looking to enable. But instead, we're going to just pivot and go quickly to John Kelly, who is our board chair. And it has been such a pleasure to be working with him over these last 5 months. He is brilliant and brings so much value. And there was a question in the chat about whether we were going to be talking about technology advancements and different things. And I hope that, that this is a part of answering that. And then I promise we'll just have a very quick wrap up when John's done, and we'll get you about your day. Thank you so much again, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
And welcome, everyone. Let's just jump right in, Julie. I think Mike really, to me, defined why CCA. CCA began in several states as a way for a city to come together and to buy power at lower costs, to put in standards, to put in protections to protect ratepayers. And so when you think about CCA, it's covering the residential and small commercial. In most states, it does not cover the bigger commercial, bigger industrial. They're out still buying competitively, doing things the way they've been doing it. But really, this was to say, let's get some buying power for the little person. In all cases, it allows that person to opt out. So when Mike talked about choice, customers always have the choice to leave the CCA. And that's an important part of CCA. That keeps the CCA competitive. It keeps it watching its toes, because if it gets too far off the rails, it's going to find its customers leaving and eroding away the system. But CCAs in most parts around the country formed around a city. California was one of the early ones to bring a bunch of cities together under what we call a joint power authority. What Mike's described today is something that's between a joint power authority, which brings a bunch of cities together to buy power. So most CCAs just use a retail supplier, like in Illinois or in some of the other states. They just go out to bid to a retail supplier and help the customers get a better retail bid. A joint power authority actually is buying direct wholesale power and can go into power purchase agreements, can go into customer DG like Mike was talking about. And what Mike created was a hybrid right in the middle, that through regulatory, which is the Public Service Commission, or through legislation, you basically allowed the CCAs within that city or state to now bring their customers into a longer term contract for local clean power. And so that's what we really see is the transition from CCA, from retail in the beginning to some type of hybrid like Mike's described, or ultimately like California into a joint power authority. And so Lean will be working with states across the country to help the states expand. And I think that's what Julie was talking about, the expansion. So I just wanted to talk about, that's one of our big focuses. Next slide. What I wanted to explain is why electricity is so important as we discuss carbon. And even if you think about renewables, what I call them a no fossil fuel source of energy. So there's no cost to the fuel. And so ultimately, in the long run, it's going to give you the lowest cost. And we've seen that with wind now. We're seeing CCAs sign wind contracts, 10-year wind contracts for 2 cents or $20 a megawatt hour. So the market has become so competitive and the technology has progressed. You know, we now have turbines that no longer have mechanical gears in them. So a lot of the failures we saw in the past with wind turbines are gone now. The turbines are getting bigger and more efficient. So same thing's happening in solar. So we're seeing the technology advancements, and all we're doing is providing mechanisms to allow customers to be able to pool their power and gain access to the technology. But what I wanted to show you here is we did a net zero simulation for a large municipal utility. This is a 400 megawatts, 1.5 million megawatt hours of power. And what you can see here is for this particular municipal utility, they were very heavily coal with a carbon footprint of 2,000 pounds per megawatt hour. Well, you can see in that case, electricity was 53% of their total carbon footprint. And even in a city, as you move over in case 2 to a city that has a carbon footprint of 1,000 pounds a megawatt hour, it's still 36% of the carbon footprint. So electricity is a good place to start as we're thinking about lowering costs and reducing carbon. And what we'd be interested in, and if there are other people, I just think we'd like to get some feedback from everyone, is if people would like to see the net zero simulation, we can show that. Go to the next slide. Oh, we took out that slide. That's okay. The simulator allows you to put in inputs and be able to see immediately what the impact was on both your cost, your carbon footprint, and it allows you to look at solar, commercial, residential, plug-in vehicles, residential, commercial, and be able to factor in a whole bunch of other assumptions. I just wanted everybody to see, this is from the eGrid. The EPA puts out the eGrid database every year. and you can look at this in more detail after our presentation today. But this shows you the states where, and I'm using this as a sort of a way to look at how how each city might look within that state, because most cities actually buy their power exactly as the state's buying their power. So what you can see here is we've got about 17 states with carbon footprints above 1,000 pounds per megawatt hour. And then you can see the best performing states use hydro and renewable. And those are states blessed with very high hydro and some big biomass resources like Idaho, Maine, and Vermont. Then you get into what I call the hydro-nuclear states, New Hampshire and New York, that have achieved very low carbon numbers. Then you get into what I call the renewable hydro and natural gas. And those are California, Oregon, and Washington. And then from that, then you can see that, and this is what you see CCAs doing combinations of what you're seeing on this chart as these states have moved to get much more effective. And now I want to just look at New Jersey real quick. I did it as a highlight. New Jersey's 57% gas, 38% nuclear, and 5% renewable. And they've achieved a very good carbon footprint. But that might not look like what some might define as a great future. And while we want to get to 100% renewable, and Mike has actually given cities a way to get there, we can find that we can quickly, I mean, literally when we did that net zero simulation for that big municipal utility here in Illinois, they could literally sign contracts and put in place in the next 3 to 4 years, get themselves to 97% renewable at a cost that's lower than what they're paying now. It depends where you are in the country, but what we're saying is most states could take action, most cities could take action tomorrow to go from 1,500 pounds to 300 pounds per megawatt hour, and in some cases to zero. It just depends where they're at. So it's doable. We can do it economically. And Lean is really working to put in place, with the help of Mike and some of the other innovators that we have on the call today, to put in place these new, really innovative regulatory frameworks that enable cities to basically accomplish incredible carbon goals up to 100% or zero carbon very quickly. So I just want to leave everybody with that, Julie, and I'll stop there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. That was amazing. And it really highlights what can be done really quickly and tactically with devoted people. So we totally appreciate everything you've done. And we're looking forward to that collaboration going forward. So we have a couple of questions in the Q&A that I think if folks could leave their follow-up information, because what I really like to do is, we're running over 11 o'clock. And so I really want to honor the trying to keep this within an hour. So my wrap up is going to be roughly a minute. But I did want to remind you that we will be posting this presentation. We will be posting the recording of this presentation, and our contact information is there on our website. And we are always open to any feedback, good, bad, whatever you have to say. We're really looking forward to that. So our goal is to continue the high level of expertise and collaboration that Lean has been known for in the last decade. And like I said, we really value your feedback, and we will reach out to you, or you can feel free to contact us with the feedback, good or bad. We can only serve you best through an open and honest dialogue. And we're an organization that's able to serve in this role because your organizations financially fund our mission. We would be honored to continue to have your financial support going forward. A key component of how we're looking at the future model is that we will also fund our local advocacy organizations. As Mike highlighted, grassroots advocacy is key, and a pilot can quickly go statewide through this sort of focus. He also mentioned the Recovery Act being a fundamental moment in the momentum for their success. And we're standing in that same moment coming out of COVID and the desire nationally to build back better. So we are leaning in, pardon the bad pun, to seize this moment. And we hope that we can count on you in leaning in with us. And with that, we will now end our first webinar of Lean 2.0. But I have to say, I have been a de facto teacher to my children in the last 14 months, much against my will. And as my 8-year-old will tell you, is that if he were the principal, he wouldn't be hiring me to be his teacher. I agree. So, but I have to leave you with some homework. And that homework today would be, please remember to weigh in and go to Cal CCA's website, cal-cca.org today, to weigh in your support for them in their important movement on the PCIA legislation. So with that, we bid you all farewell. Thank you for spending your time with us today.